It's entitled, and it's a bit silly, I must admit, it should be AI, not IT. So, but it's entitled IT like it, the impersonal subject singular. It will be moderated by Cris Argüelles, who is a Vienna-based Spanish architect now. She has her degree from the Polytechnical School in Madrid. She is running her own office, practice called Blast, and since quite recently she is scientific assistant and PhD candidate at the department RTTP here in Vienna. Thank you, Cris.
Is it okay if I close this? Not okay. Sorry.
Do you want to have a presentation?
No,
So what
really.
given
No, just
like this?
the background's fine. Yeah. Or even just need to have something. Okay, thank you, Vera, for the introduction. As we said, like we're beginning now the last panel number 5, and I also want to stand as a member of the ATTP that it's been a pleasure to host you at this occasion here, and that also I hope that you have enjoyed the papers. I mean, since I'm the last to speak, I think I also have to make a little bit of a closure by saying that I hope you enjoyed all the papers and conversations that have taken place this year under the title of Copia and Copiousness, Circuitous Articulations that Matter. And of course, I want to thank Vera as well for giving me the opportunity to speak for the first time and introduce the panel, as you said, it like it, or IT like it, the impersonal subject singular. So as we also slowly approach the beginning of the next interventions by, as I know now, Roberto, and then Miro, and then by the end, Ludger, I feel like I'm also in a rather unique position because it's also, as I said, the closure of the conference, to use some words to index my enthusiastic preoccupations, which have been addressed beautifully as, throughout the last panels, and also to praise the absolute fascination when they render in so various rich formulations things that I cannot speak of myself yet. So me being not being somebody of English words, that meaning that I struggle sometimes to take them out from the mouth with full impulse. So, and also that maybe is extensive to my own mother tongue. So maybe it would even be better to say that I'm not myself somebody of many words. So I decided to take first kind of a straightforward task of having in my mouth or chewing slightly this very short one, which is it. And I also felt a little bit uncomfortable with IT, so I mean, as how to make it like it. And so it, which is not he or a she, but it's still singular and personal, and third. And then IT, which is, then I refers to information technologies or AI, which is the mechanic kind of global generic. And well, as you can see, I kind of went fast through it, so I guess I give you just a very short, direct description of what those things are. But I suddenly escalated into a circumstance of complications that I hope the people in our panel today will help to clarify. So my question was a little bit how do you make IT or AI into it? And how does one set the alchemic acts to making such one like another? And more ambitiously, if they're being the same thing, how to tell them apart? And if they might neighbor quite close, even just, I think the play of the words wants to deal with that, which could be the way to give words to one another in terms of the other, so such that it would be almost impossible to determine their small unlikeness. Or if that is what we are after in this afternoon, which might not be the case. Then I realized, first of all, since I was kind of struggling with the English words in my mouth, that the Spanish words in my mouth, with them, I could not recognize ways in which to address the impersonal third really, because simply it's not there, it doesn't exist. It's a grammatical void. I hadn't noticed before, because I had never thought of it, that in Spanish it seems kind of 100% incorrect to address something as a subject if it's not personal. And then that also meaning not named. So instead we choose to instruct anything else which is unnamed, or that would be, I guess, the impersonal, by specifically placing it in distance as others. So we say esto, or we say as a further others, eso, aquello, as in English would be this and that, but we don't have a specific word for it. And so when we want to use a specific, or we, for instance, in an impersonal verb, so we directly don't acknowledge its presence at all. So when we want to say it rains, we just say hoy no llueve, which means it would be today rains not. So it's simply it, that's away completely. So it is really quite literally not there as much as IT is not there. In English language instead, it becomes an ideal formulation for something absent, which substitutes almost unconditionally. But also, that's something else, which in principle, with it, you could consider things like small or, I guess, also big animals, or any other creatures, or like cute babies, or skinny insects, or sexless aliens, or supercomputers, as impersonal subjects. Even so, for something as much of not a lot of mass, something like light enough, something even of pure meteorological conditions and characteristics, which is by force something that cannot be singular personal qualities like hosting clouds or creating shadows. However, things are slightly different if one turns to be a star or a king. And if one turns out to have a title as a name, or a king star which has a very proper title name. This, I think, we dressed with proper names, also, as I said before, in a much proper manner than I might do it now, but I'm considering now the Sun King, no? And I thought one which is so bright that it's so ostentatiously singular, but not because it's irreplaceable, because it's just one Louis less, one Louis more, but because it becomes a singular impersonal persona by being, for necessary reasons, absent, because it can never really stop being exposed. The good old trick of hiding things at plain sight. The virtual impersonal persona is perhaps caught up in the involuntary production of his own personal absence, absorbed in the task of demonstrating outside his fiction, like Don Quixote is doing, that he is completely insane in a generic world. Only that in generic madness, paradoxical states coexist without being absurd. An effective effort to cancel the reasons that make the identification of clear sense productive, Don Quixote is perfectly not mad inside such world. In ancient Greece, of course, the light at night that the fire in the home brought announced the presence of Castor and Pollux, the Dioscuri, the same presence that they claim when making their appearance in the horizon in the constellation of Gemini, the twins, where they share the alloy of immortal warriors and protectors of all the supporting elements, poles, pillars, ships, masts, columns, keepers of all vertical axes with which the world acquired body presence, with which it was no longer a plane or a shadow, and so the world rose. In this endless roaming between the upper and lower worlds, consequence of their shared immortality, the dilemma of being alive and dead in a synchronic manner gave them the virtue of eternity. But in exchange, they were also given the task of making sure that such passage between between the Olympus and the Hades would not collapse. Like all twins and like all doors, they were singular doubles. As Copia, they're made of reciprocal talents. They alternate in such. the gimbal twins, as I call them, in that is that which is singular impersonal, but which requires not polarities nor up and downs, but which exist in the necessity in a copious way. It's like a mechanism of a hinge of such door, which divides the Olympus and the Hades, because a hinge is a joint that holds two parts together so that one can swing relative to the other. But one hinge is not enough. Two minimum hinges make the action possible. So opening and closing becomes the same gesture. And now I was going to introduce Miro, but I will introduce Roberto, which will continue with his talk, who also wants to conjure speculative thinking on such fertile grounds of mathematics and logics in spaces by computational design, right? So his talk will be titled Spaces of Machine Learning. If you want, you can start setting this up, because I know it will take you a little bit. Roberto is an architect, researcher, and educator based in London. He has studied in Italy and Canada before moving to London, where he is director of the Master in Urban Design at Bartlett, UCL. His research analyzes the impact of digital technologies in architecture and urbanism. He is the author of Digital Architecture Beyond Computers, Fragments of Cultural History and Computational Design by Bloomsbury, 2018. And he's also editor at Walking Cities, London, Camberwell Press, 2017. So please, take his taste.
Thank you. If I